Hey Easy2 digital audience, Lewis here, bringing you another AI signal to help you reclaim your time, upgrade your lifestyle. Today, we're diving deep into a company so vital, it shapes the global tech landscape, TSMC. Imagine a company that builds nothing you actually hold, yet its creations power nearly every smart device and AI innovation on Earth. They're at a critical juncture, expanding globally, but is it a strategic masterstroke or a costly misstep? We'll uncover the hidden truths behind their overseas factories, the impossible challenges they face, and what it all means for our AI-driven future. Stick around, because we're about to explore Chapter 1, the unseen giant TSMC's global monopoly. Chapter 2, Taiwan's unshakable moat's talent, capacity, governance. Chapter 3, the ghost of wafertech lessons from a past nightmare. Chapter 4, Arizona's AI ambition, geopolitics versus reality. Chapter 5, global footprint, Japan, Germany, and beyond. Chapter 6, the eye-watering cost of overseas expansion. Chapter 7, Taiwan's Silicon Shield, global reliance and risk. Chapter 8, strategic sacrifice, the future of TSMC's global dream. Before the show starts, remember to subscribe to our channel, give it a like, and share today's content. Thank you all for your support. Alright, Easy2 Digital fam, let's talk about a company that Donald Trump once called one of the most important in the world. It's a name you might not recognize on your gadgets, but trust me, they control the very pulse of global technology. We're talking about TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company. They don't make your iPhone, but they make the chips that power it. This behemoth, operating from an island smaller than many US states, accounts for over 60% of the world's semiconductor output and a staggering 90% of advanced chip production. Think about that for a second. 8 out of the top 10 global companies rely heavily on TSMC. Even those seemingly unrelated to their underlying operations can't escape TSMC's silicon. In the last 5 years, TSMC has embarked on an unprecedented global factory building spree. Arizona, Kumamoto in Japan, Dresden in Germany, over $200 billion poured into these new bases. Now, as these plants start churning out wafers, a burning question emerges: are they actually successful? Or, as TSMC founder Morris Chang bluntly put it, is America's ambition for local chip manufacturing just an expensive futility? What gives him such a grim outlook? And what does this epic industrial migration mean for global tech, geopolitics, and our AI-powered future? So, what makes TSMC so ridiculously dominant? Many point to its cutting-edge technology, and that's definitely a piece of the puzzle. But the true secret sauce, the unshakable foundation, lies in 3 moats, deeply entrenched in Taiwan: its unparalleled talent pool, hyper-concentrated manufacturing capacity, and world-class governance. These 3 pillars form TSMC's almost impossible to replicate success formula. First, talent. Imagine a global corporation with over 83,000 employees, where nearly 90% are Taiwanese, and 88% of management are also local. This isn't some exclusionary policy, it's the natural result of decades of cultivating local talent. TSMC has built a seamless pipeline from universities to its factories, partnering with 17 local universities to offer 57 semiconductor-related majors. Second, capacity concentration. Over 90% of TSMC's total production is concentrated in Taiwan. This tiny island powers 60% of global semiconductors. This concentration brings massive scale and synergy. Factories are often just a 3-hour drive apart. A problem in one? Engineers from another can be there in a flash. Try replicating that in, say, the vast American landscape. It's a logistical nightmare. Now, let's peel back the layers and look at history. Many assume TSMC's overseas expansion started recently with Arizona, right? Wrong. Back in 1996, Morris Chang himself ventured into the US with WaferTech, a joint venture in Washington state. He later described it as a journey from dream come true to nightmare come true. Ouch. In the booming 90s, with revenue nearing $1 billion and profit margins soaring, TSMC's top clients were practically begging for more capacity. So, Chang decided to partner with them, building WaferTech as TSMC's first foray into global manufacturing. The confidence was sky high. They knew US costs would be higher, but optimistically believed profits would still be acceptable. Oh, how naive they were. Chang confessed in his autobiography, "It was chaos from the start, full of terrible surprises. Costs spiraled out of control, land, materials, labor, all far exceeding Taiwanese benchmarks. Management clashes between Taiwan and the US, cultural differences, and wildly different work paces crippled decision-making. And talent? The US simply lacked skilled semiconductor engineers. Taiwanese engineers sent over struggled with language and adaptation, dragging down efficiency. It took 4 years and sending a senior VP to stabilize operations, but even then, WaferTech's profit margins were consistently 20 to 25% lower than Taiwanese fabs. Chang's reflections on WaferTech, even decades later, were filled with a profound weariness, underscoring his deep skepticism about manufacturing outside Taiwan. So, after the WaferTech debacle, why on earth would TSMC venture back into the US with an even bigger factory in Arizona, 20 years later? The answer, my friends, is geopolitics and immense pressure. In 2020, under the watchful eye of the US government, TSMC announced a $12 billion investment for an advanced manufacturing plant in Phoenix, Arizona. This wasn't some proactive market move, it was a strategic compromise, a direct response to intense American lobbying. Morris Chang himself didn't mince words, stating it was done at the urging of the US government. He's consistently voiced skepticism, warning that America's push for domestic chip manufacturing, even with billions in subsidies, would ultimately be an expensive futility. His argument isn't just pessimism, it's rooted in a deep understanding of the semiconductor industry's core logic. TSMC's success thrives on Taiwan's one-hour semiconductor ecosystem. Imagine, suppliers and partners all within an hour's reach. Need something? You get it instantly. In Arizona, it's a completely different ballgame. America's infrastructure and supply chain are far more scattered. Many materials need to be flown in, incurring huge costs and delays. The US lacks the decades-old, mature semiconductor cluster that Taiwan boasts. A senior VP, H.Y. Chu, highlighted that Taiwan's science parks allow for easy communication and quick access to everything needed within an hour. In the US, a drive across a metro area can take an hour. The contrast couldn't be starker, and it spells trouble for Arizona's ambitious AI dreams. Beyond Arizona, TSMC's global footprint extends to Japan with the JASM factory and Germany with the ESMC plant. But here's the kicker. Unlike the advanced focus in Arizona, these two factories are primarily churning out mature process chips, catering to local clients. They're essentially TSMC's geopolitical safety net, designed to mitigate risks and satisfy governmental demands for localized production. In Japan, the JASM factory in Kumamoto, a joint venture with Sony and others, is making 28 nanometers and 16 nanometers chips for CMOS image sensors and automotive electronics. Phase 1 is already running, but Phase 2, targeting 6 nanometers and 12 nanometers, faces delays due to local infrastructure issues and soft market demand. Japan's government, keen on securing chips for its auto and electronics industries, offered a hefty $4.88 billion subsidy, a major incentive for TSMC. Similarly, in Germany, the ESMC factory in Dresden, a partnership with Bosch and Infineon, is focusing on 28 nanometers and 16 nanometers chips for Europe's robust automotive industry. While construction is underway, the overall strategy mirrors Japan. Localize, get subsidies, and fulfill government needs. However, both these sites face the same uphill battles as Arizona: immature supply chains, local talent shortages, and escalating costs. Take JASM, for instance. It still relies on Taiwan and other Asian countries for many raw materials and equipment, leading to higher logistics costs and longer lead times. And Germany, despite its industrial prowess, simply can't match Taiwan's dense semiconductor ecosystem. So, let's talk brass tacks. Money. Are these overseas factories actually profitable? The core challenge for profitability is cost control. How much more expensive is it to make a wafer outside Taiwan? The answer, unfortunately, is a lot. Wafer production costs primarily break down into equipment depreciation, raw materials, labor, and energy. And these categories diverge wildly between Taiwan and overseas. First, equipment depreciation. Advanced chip-making gear is astronomically expensive. One EUV machine alone costs over $150 million. Taiwanese fabs, running at near full capacity, spread this cost across more wafers. New overseas plants? Not so much, leading to higher per wafer depreciation. Plus, fragmented supply chains mean higher procurement, transport, and installation costs for equipment abroad. Then, raw materials. Arizona's special gases and photoresists? Mostly imported from Taiwan or Japan, often by air, ballooning costs compared to Taiwan's local, land-based supply. The US also has fewer suppliers, meaning less competition and higher prices. Labor? A no-brainer. Wages in the US, Japan, and Germany are 2 to 3 times higher than in Taiwan, and that's just for technicians. Senior engineers command even more. And don't forget the hefty overseas allowances and housing subsidies for dispatched Taiwanese staff. Energy? Semiconductor manufacturing is power-hungry. US electricity and water prices, while lower than Europe, still dwarf Taiwan's. Plus, stringent local environmental regulations mean more investment in wastewater and exhaust treatment. Put it all together, and SemiAnalysis estimates a 30 to 40% higher unit cost for 4 nanometers wafers in Arizona compared to Taiwan, and 25 to 30% for 28 nanometers wafers in Japan. This gnaws at profit margins. Taiwan's gross margins are typically over 60%, while Arizona's are projected at a paltry 40% or even less. Without massive government subsidies, these overseas ventures would likely be money pits. Subsidies, however, aren't a permanent solution. The long-term viability hinges on localized supply chains, homegrown talent, and vastly improved operational efficiency, a tall order that demands both time and significant investment. Now, let's step back and consider the grand chessboard. TSMC's expansion isn't just about business, it's about national security and geopolitical leverage. For Taiwan, TSMC is nothing short of an economic titan, contributing over 5% to its GDP. More crucially, it's Taiwan's silicon shield, its strategic importance in the global semiconductor industry granting it outsized international influence and a vital layer of security. However, this global push by TSMC isn't without its anxieties back home. 2 main fears loom large: technology leakage and talent drain. If too much of TSMC's cutting-edge tech migrates overseas, it could dilute Taiwan's technological edge and weaken that precious silicon shield. And with seasoned engineers being dispatched abroad, there's a real concern about a brain drain, impacting Taiwan's local R&D and production capabilities. Taiwan's government, while proud of TSMC's global reach and its role in diversifying supply chains, is acutely aware of these risks. They've placed restrictions, ensuring the most advanced processes, think 3 nanometers and below, remain firmly on Taiwanese soil. Globally, the reliance on TSMC is staggering. The 2021 chip shortage, primarily affecting mature nodes, cost the US economy an estimated $240 billion. Imagine if advanced chip supply was disrupted. Analysts describe it as a 100-foot tsunami, compared to a 10-foot wave. Nearly all companies in the global top 10, barring Saudi Aramco, are utterly dependent on TSMC. Even Aramco's oil fields and refineries rely on TSMC-made semiconductors. Apple's iPhones, Microsoft's cloud, Google's search and Android, Amazon's e-commerce, Nvidia's GPUs, Tesla's autonomous driving. Their core chips almost universally come from TSMC. Over a third of these companies' revenues, representing 3% of US GDP, hinge on TSMC's silicon. And most of that production is concentrated in less than a square mile in southern Taiwan. TSMC's stability isn't just good for tech, it's a global economic imperative. This dependence drives governments worldwide to woo TSMC with massive subsidies, not just as an economic play, but as a national security imperative, striving for domestic semiconductor resilience. So, Lewis here again. Have TSMC's overseas factories actually succeeded? From a purely commercial standpoint, Morris Chang's blunt assessment of expensive futility holds significant weight in the short term. These foreign ventures are undeniably burdened by sky-high costs, nascent supply chains, and a chronic shortage of local talent, severely impacting their profitability. They simply cannot replicate Taiwan's hyper-efficient ecosystem. However, to view them solely through a commercial lens misses the larger strategic picture. In an era of escalating geopolitical tensions and a global scramble for chip autonomy, these overseas factories are less about immediate profit centers and more about strategic investments. They're a necessary compromise, a lifeline to alleviate political pressure, diversify risk, and safeguard TSMC's crucial relationships with governments and major clients. The question isn't just, are they profitable, but are they necessary for long-term survival? For TSMC, this expansion is a delicate balancing act, a high-stakes gamble on the future. While replicating Taiwan's complete ecosystem abroad remains a monumental challenge, TSMC possesses unparalleled technical prowess, robust client relationships, and vast operational experience. With sustained investment, governmental support, and supplier collaboration, these overseas operations could gradually improve. The Arizona plant's initial yield rates, for example, are surprisingly strong for a new facility. TSMC's global expansion reshapes the entire semiconductor landscape, distributing risk, but it also means the world's most advanced chips will, for the foreseeable future, remain primarily a Taiwanese affair. Morris Chang's skepticism might be economically accurate for now, but these factories represent a strategic imperative, a reluctant yet vital investment in a politically charged future. The ultimate success or failure will dictate the trajectory of global tech for decades. This is Easy2 Digital, reclaiming your time, upgrading your lifestyle. See you next time.